All right, welcome. Today we're diving into a really fascinating and honestly a pretty short prophecy in the book of Zechariah. We're looking at chapter 6, specifically verses 9 through 15. And what we're going to see is a prophet getting a command to do something, well, something pretty much unthinkable. He's told to crown a priest, and this one symbolic act points to a future king who is totally unlike anyone who came before.
So here's how we'll break it down. We're going to follow the story in 5 simple parts. First, we get the word from the Lord. Then, some interesting gifts show up from a foreign land. After that, we get to the main event, the crowning of the priest. Then we'll unpack who this mysterious figure called the branch is. And finally, we'll look at the memorial and the promise that wraps this whole thing up.
Okay, let's jump right in. Our story kicks off in verse 9. This is where the prophet Zechariah gets a direct instruction from God. And what's really cool here is that this isn't some kind of vague dream or a mystical vision. Nope, this is a command to go out and do something tangible, something in the real world. And then in verse 10, the scene gets set. A group of guys, a delegation, shows up all the way from Babylon. And, their arrival in Jerusalem is actually the trigger. It's the catalyst for this whole prophetic drama that's about to play out. Now, the Bible is super specific here. It actually names these guys, Heldai, Tobiah, and Jediah, which, of course, makes you wonder, who are these people? Are they, famous, powerful leaders? What's their deal? Well, as it turns out, commentaries tell us they were, well, just regular guys. They were returning exiles. Not kings, not famous generals. In fact, they have no other known historical significance at all. But, and this is the important part, they are absolutely crucial because they've brought gifts, silver and gold, to help rebuild the temple. So in a way, they stand in for all the faithful people who support God's work, even when they're far away. And the command that Zechariah gets in verse 10 is incredibly precise. He's told to go that very day and find these men at a specific house, the house of Josiah, son of Zephaniah. Now, this Josiah was a contemporary of the prophet, and he was probably a man of some influence. Maybe he was even the treasurer for the temple donations. This little detail is great because it just grounds this whole prophetic event in a real time and a real place. Okay, so now we get to verse 11, and this is where God's instruction to Zechariah takes a really dramatic and, frankly, a very strange turn. This is the absolute heart of the prophecy. So God tells Zechariah, take that silver and gold that those guys brought and make crowns. And get this, the word is crowns, plural, not just one. Then he's told to do something totally unthinkable. Put them on the head of Joshua, the high priest. You have to understand just how radical this would have seemed. In ancient Israel, the jobs of priest and king were totally, strictly separate. A priest wore a special turban for his sacred duties. A king wore a crown. That was the symbol of royal power. So to put a royal crown on the head of the high priest, whoa, that was a shocking move that completely blurred those sacred lines. Anyone who saw it would have been absolutely stunned. So what's the deal with this shocking act? Why crown a priest? Well, verses 12 and 13 give us the answer. This whole thing is like a prophetic play, and Joshua the priest is basically playing a part. He's a living symbol, a stand-in for someone else who is yet to come. And through Zechariah, the Lord explains exactly what's going on. He says, behold, the man whose name is the branch. See, this whole crowning thing isn't really about Joshua at all. It's a living, breathing picture of a future figure who goes by this very specific title. And that title, the branch, is a really big deal. It's a key messianic term that echoes other prophecies you see in books like Isaiah and Jeremiah. It's all about the promised king from the line of David who would sort of branch out or spring up, bringing restoration and brand new life with him. And this just illustrates the work of the branch perfectly. The prophecy in verse 13 actually says it twice. He shall build the temple of the Lord. This repetition is important because it's drawing a clear line in the sand. You see, Joshua and the governor, Zerubbabel, they were busy working on the physical temple in Jerusalem. But the branch, he's going to build a completely different kind of temple, a future spiritual one. And this right here, this is the stunning climax of the whole prophecy. This future guy, the branch, is going to do something that was thought to be impossible. He's going to unite the two offices that were always kept separate. He's going to be both a priest and a king. Just like verse 13 says, he will be a priest upon his throne. He's merging royal authority with the role of a priestly mediator. And the result? Perfect peace. Not just peace between the two offices, but peace between God and all of humanity. All right, let's wrap this up by looking at the last two verses, 14 and 15. This is where we see how this whole dramatic prophecy concludes and what its lasting legacy is supposed to be.
So what happened to those crowns? Well, verse 14 explains that they weren't for Joshua to keep and wear around. No, they were supposed to be placed in the newly built temple as a memorial. They were meant to be a permanent testimony, a physical reminder of those guys from Babylon whose gifts made the whole thing possible. And even more than that, they were a powerful reminder of the promise of this coming priest king.
Then, in verse 15, the prophecy just gets bigger. It expands with this incredible promise. And they that are far off shall come and build in the temple of the Lord. I mean, wow. This is pointing to a future where people from far away, non-Jewish people, Gentiles, from all over the world will get to take part in building this spiritual temple. They'll become part of God's family. And then the whole thing ends with this really powerful condition right at the end of verse 15. It says, "And this shall come to pass if you will diligently obey the voice of the Lord your God." So the fulfillment of this whole incredible promise, this priest king, this global spiritual family, it's all tied to obedience. It leaves the original audience, and I think us today, with that direct, challenging question just hanging in the air.